My uncle barked over the radio, ordering him to wait, but the pilot ignored every call. The little plane raced down the strip and climbed into the night. Static filled the radio. In the hiss, he caught pieces of words, then one clear command: run. The signal went dead. He leaned back, trying to make sense of what he had heard, and then remembered the woman. When he raised the binoculars again, she was facing the tower, 200 yards away. Eyes opened so wide they looked painful. With no hint of snow beneath her feet, she started running straight at him. He had weathered 6 years in Vietnam and thought fear no longer owned him, yet something about that figure sprinting through the night sent ice through his chest. He called Joe, the guard, but no answer came. He glanced down just in time to see the front door of the tower slam open. Instinct pushed him toward the small bathroom beside the radar racks. He locked himself in. Outside, chaos exploded. Equipment crashing, drawers slamming, the quick thump of feet. Once a violent bang struck the bathroom door so hard the handle shook. Then, total silence settled. He stayed hidden until dawn's orange light leaked under the door. At 7:45, the day controller Clark arrived, cursed loudly, and opened the door for him. The control room looked wrecked. Radio panels lay torn from their mounts. Screens were smashed. Paper covered every inch of the floor. Police took statements and shook their heads. Repairs lasted 11 days. Joe was fired for sleeping on duty. Cameras were discussed, but not installed right away. My uncle convinced himself that the intruder must have been a mentally ill woman from a nearby town. The story grew weaker in his mind until it felt half real, half nightmare. He returned on March 4th. Nights stayed calm through the rest of February and into early March. Snow kept falling. One evening near the end of another shift, a private jet called from 50 miles out. Turbulence and ice forced them to seek an immediate landing. The jet was larger than anything the Atlantic Strip usually handled, yet emergencies bent the rules. He gave clearance and watched the snow swirling outside the glass. Then, like a ghost, she appeared again. She stepped onto the far end of the runway, barefoot as before, the thin dress fluttering against white flakes. Somehow, her face pointed right at him. Her eyes, still stretched wide, did not blink. He realized that in the earlier encounter she had never closed them once. 2 full minutes passed while she stared and never let those lids drop. He ordered the jet to hold altitude, but the pilot refused. They could not stay up in the rough air. He granted permission, heart pounding, knowing the woman now stood only 100 feet from the tower door. Against orders, he ran downstairs and locked the outside handle, then hurried back to his console. From the window, the runway looked empty. Maybe she had already slipped away. The jet announced final approach. At that instant, something crashed against the downstairs door. Metal squealed. He stared at the radio because looking anywhere else felt impossible. Heavy steps climbed the tower stairs, each footfall angrily loud, as though someone slammed the sole into the metal with purpose. He kept his voice level and cleared the jet to land. Behind him, the office door creaked open. Every part of him wanted to run, yet he could not even turn his head. Cold breath brushed his neck. He felt lips stop an inch from his ear. A whisper slid out, "Come down to the field." The tone was not loud, but carried thick anger, colder than the winter wind outside. The jet touched down safely and began to taxi. The breath faded. The footsteps retreated, rapid at first, then gone. He forced himself to turn, saw the empty doorway, and managed to call the guard. Together, they searched every floor. No sign of her. Officers arrived and combed the tower, the runway, and the corn beyond the wire fence. They found a single line of barefoot prints leading from the field to the tower. No prints returned to the field. Snow kept falling, soft enough to record new marks, yet nothing else appeared. He feared people would believe he had been drinking on duty. He felt sure the woman was real, not a ghost, though he could not explain how she moved or why. With no real proof, he kept most of the details to himself. Spring came early that year. By April, the snow melted and green stalks poked up in the fields. He convinced himself the horror had died with winter. On a warm night in late April, a freight carrier voiced trouble with an engine. They needed to drop fast. He guided them down, confident again, until motion on the tarmac stole his focus. There she was under the yellow floodlights, skin gray now, dress hanging in shreds. Her hair clung wet to her cheeks, though rain had not fallen for days. A fuel truck driver stood frozen near his cab. She touched his sleeve, whispered, and the driver stumbled back, climbed into the cab, and sped from the grounds. The truck's horn wailed across the flat land, fading inside corn rows. My uncle called Joe's replacement, but the new guard was out inspecting a gate. Alone once more, he felt the tower vibrate as the woman began to climb the iron stairs on the outside of the shaft. The steps were bolted to the wall like a fire escape. He heard the clang of bare feet on steel. The freight carrier's pilot kept talking, asking for final corrections. My uncle delivered instructions in a thin breath while looking up at the ceiling hatch that opened to the outer platform. Each clang grew louder until he knew she was a step away. The hatch lifted. Wind rushed in, yet it seemed weaker than the chill already inside the room. Her head appeared first, tilted, eyes even wider than before. She crawled through the opening on hands and knees, skin blue from cold, though the air was mild. As she stood, she never looked at the equipment or the lights. She looked only at him. The freight plane touched down with a roar that rattled glass. The woman flinched, turned, and walked across the room. Her bare foot pressed onto a splintered screen, sliced open, but she did not slow. Blood left small circles behind her. She climbed onto the opposite sill and stepped out onto nothing, falling past the windows and disappearing into the dark. Officers and medics came after the plane had parked. They searched under the tower with flashlights. There was no body, no blood beneath the windows, no drag marks. Only the spots of blood inside the control room proved she had stood there at all. Those stains never washed out completely. Maintenance painted over them, but the dark shape always bled through. My uncle finished his story by saying he served at that airport for 6 more months before transferring to Idaho. He never saw the woman again. Sometimes on nights when sleep will not come, he still hears the thin clang of feet on a metal stair and feels cold breath on his skin. He wonders if the woman was flesh or something older, something that borrowed a human shape because it helped her move closer to whoever happened to look out of a certain glass tower in a lonely field of corn. He admits he will never know, yet each time winter rolls across the Midwest, he opens the news and checks small-town papers for odd reports. So far, he has found nothing, and that silence haunts him even more. He leaned back, folded his hands, and stared at the floor until the last word settled in the room. My aunt touched his shoulder and told him the coffee had gone cold, but he did not seem to notice. I saved the file, closed the laptop, and suddenly felt the weight of an Iowa night I had never seen. My uncle has lived a full life, but when he recalls those hours in the tower, his voice still shakes like radio static on a frozen runway. I had not flown in years, but my grandson insisted I attend his college graduation in Miami. He booked me on the cheapest red-eye he could find, United Flight 1658, leaving San Francisco at 11:55 p.m. and landing a little after 8 the next morning. I am 69 and walk with a cane, so the gate agent kindly pre-boarded me. Row 14 was only halfway down the cabin, right side. My seat was 14B, an aisle. The window, 14A, showed as vacant on the boarding screen. An empty seat beside me felt like a small gift. I stowed my purse, settled my coat over my knees, and listened to the slow river of other passengers filing past. Most looked tired, hoodies, earbuds, paper coffee cups shaking in nervous hands. When boarding seemed almost done, a man stepped into my row. He did not hesitate or check his ticket. He simply turned sideways, slipped into 14A, and sat. I felt the brush of a heavy wool coat against my sleeve. His head stayed low, chin tucked into a gray scarf. No carry-on, no drink. He folded his hands in his lap, fingers pale against black gloves. I decided to be polite. "Long night," I whispered. He did not move. I tried again. "Miami's warmer than this." Nothing. I laughed softly, more for myself than him, and faced the aisle. The cabin lights dimmed for takeoff. I expected him to buckle in, but his belt was already clicked. Perhaps he fastened it before I noticed. During the climb, the plane shuddered the way planes do, like a bus on a gravel road. My seatmate neither flinched nor shifted. His shoulders stayed square, posture too stiff for someone who planned to sleep. I watched the yellow seatbelt sign glow off his coat's dull fibers. Each thread looked damp, almost sticky, as if he had walked through drizzle. An hour later, the attendants began their quiet service. The cart rattled up the aisle, offering water and pretzels. When the woman reached our row, she leaned toward me. "Anything to drink?" I took a ginger ale. She glanced at the window seat, eyes puzzled. "And for him? He hasn't said a word," I whispered. She bent closer to the man. "Sir?" No answer. She waited the required beat, then placed a miniature water on his tray table, untouched. The cart moved on. I sipped my ginger ale, the bubbles sharp in the back of my mouth. I noticed the man's gloves, no airline reflection on the leather, as if they swallowed light. His breath made no fog in the dim cabin air. I must have nodded off because I woke to darkness, except for emergency aisle markers and a faint movie glow from 3 rows ahead. My watch said 3:07 a.m. My neck was sore. I stretched a little and felt the man's coat sleeve again, pressing gently against my arm, as though he had leaned my way while I slept. The pressure was constant, not the accidental bump of turbulence. I drew back, but the armrest pinned me. I said, "Sir, could you give me a little space?" No response. I pressed the call button. Nothing happened. Perhaps the bulb had burned out. Instead of waiting, I decided to use the restroom. I rose carefully, stepped into the aisle, and shuffled toward the rear galley. Behind me, the man did not move. The restroom line was short. 2 teenagers and a businessman waited. I glanced down the aisle. From that angle, seat 14A looked empty. Only a bare headrest caught the blue light. I frowned, tilted my head, and squinted. Still empty. A cold thought slid through me. Maybe he had followed me. Yet I had heard no footsteps. When I returned, 14A was occupied again by the same unmoving shape. I eased into 14B, heart thumping like a hand on a door. I tried to rest but kept listening for breathing. Nothing. Only the steady drone of engines and the occasional clink of glasses in first class. As dawn approached, a faint pink edge appeared through the window across the aisle. Cabin lights brightened. The lead attendant announced we would begin our descent soon, and asked everyone to raise their seat backs. The man beside me stayed rigid. I focused on small tasks, folding my blanket, straightening my purse strap, until the wheels clunked down. We landed at 8:11 a.m., rolling past bright Florida grass. Passengers unclipped their belts, stood, stretched, and retrieved bags. I waited for help with my cane. When I finally rose, the man still sat, hands folded, gaze down. I touched his sleeve, meaning to say goodbye, or at least excuse myself. The wool felt colder than the window glass. I shuffled past and exited. Inside the jet bridge, a young attendant hurried up behind me, breathless. "Ma'am, did you sit in 14B? "Yes." "Was anyone in the window seat?" I hesitated. A man in a gray coat. Her brow creased. "Our manifest shows 14A vacant. No one should have been there. He was there all night." Another attendant joined us, holding a tablet. She scrolled, frowned, then looked up. Boarding count balanced, every assigned seat filled, no extras. I felt lightheaded. Perhaps a last-minute standby? They exchanged looks. Gate records don't show that. One attendant gently guided me to a chair while the other walked back onto the plane. A minute later, she returned, shaken. "The seat is empty, belts still crossed." I insisted they check the cameras. They promised they would. I left unsettled, but trying to explain it away. Fatigue, dim light, my aging eyes. At my son's house, I told the story. He half smiled, half worried, and asked whether I had any proof. I remembered the photo. During boarding, I had taken a quick picture of the cabin to send my daughter, a silly boast about traveling alone. I opened the gallery. Row 14 glowed back at me. 2 seats, mine and an empty window. No gray coat, no gloved hands. Yet my memory of the coat's scratchy fabric was as firm as the phone in my palm. I could still feel its weight against my arm, still recall the stale scent of wet wool. I spent the day with family, trying to enjoy the celebrations, but the night brought uneasy thoughts. I lay in the guest bed, replaying each moment, the boarding, the silent man, the untouched water. I wondered whether some people travel a different way, slipping between passenger counts and camera frames, needing only a seat and the warmth of another body nearby. Maybe he had not meant harm. Maybe he only wanted company for a long, cold flight. The next morning, curiosity overrode fear. I called United Customer Service. After 3 transfers, I reached a supervisor. I asked if the crew had found any belongings in 14A, wallet, ticket stub, anything. She said housekeeping reported nothing but a sealed bottle of water. She then asked if I was the woman who filed the incident note upon arrival. I said yes. She paused and lowered her voice. The flight deck reviewed the passenger list and security footage at boarding. There is no record of anyone stepping into that seat. I thanked her and hung up. My hands trembled, but not from cold. I scrolled through my contacts and found my late husband's number, still saved though he passed 3 years ago. I tapped it, knowing it would go nowhere, yet wanting to hear the automatic message just to fill the room with a voice, even a recorded one. Outside, distant traffic hummed like airplane engines.